Welcome to Icons. It is such an honor and a privilege to welcome you once again on this program. As our regular viewers are aware, Icons is a program where we take you through the different books of the Bible. This is not so much a theological study as in trying to acquaint you with the different incidents, the people of the Bible. We are still in the Old Testament. We have finished the first 5 books, which together constitute the Pentateuch. We have a wonderful panel to help us in this discussion. We have with us Reverend Dr. Joseph Thondiparambal. Father Joseph has been teaching in the Pontifical Seminary in Alway for many years. He has done his PhD in Scripture from Rome. He's also a very valued resource person here at the Divine Institute of Bible and Spirituality, and he's also the mentor of our program. Father Joseph, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
We have with us Paul Raj. Paul Raj is from Malaysia. He works as an advocate there. He has come to help us in this program. Paul, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Abraham.
We have with us Shirley. Shirley has accompanied her husband, Paul Raj, from Malaysia. Shirley, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Abraham.
We have with us Sylvia D'Souza. Sylvia, till recently, was working in Bangalore in a company. She's also come from Bangalore to help us on this program. Sylvia, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Abraham.
We will ask Father to help us situate exactly where we are in this series. Father, could you help us, please?
At the moment, we are going through some of the activities of David.
Yes.
David, about whom it is said, the Lord himself has said, a man according to my heart. What is it that made the Lord to say that he is a person according to the heart of God? In fact, while going through some of his activities, we find that he is just an ordinary man.
Yes.
But what is special about him? And it is precisely that we want to learn, analyzing the character of David.
Thank you, Father.
Father, how is the wisdom of Solomon revealed in the incident of the 2 prostitutes?
The story of the 2 prostitutes. So that is a revealing incident where the prudence and the wisdom of Solomon comes through. The story goes as follows. 2 prostitutes, both of them gave birth, and one of them maybe accidentally slept on her child, and that child died. And when she saw that her child is dead, what she did, she took that child and put that child with the other mother, and took that her child and kept with her. On the following day morning, when the second mother got up, she wanted to feed that baby, and then she found it is not her baby. And then suddenly she approached King Solomon, and she said, now this is not my child is that one. And the other one said, no, that is not my child, but the present one is my child. Then King Solomon said, let a sword be brought. And a soldier brought a sword, and he said, let that living child be cut into 2, and 1 piece each be given to both, because both of you are making claim on that.
Yes.
And then suddenly, the actual mother of that living child, he said, no, please, so give her the child. Then Solomon understood, that is the real feeling of a mother. There was no DNA test those days to make sure, no? And for this was the way that Solomon settled this question. And perhaps in those days, there was no other witness also. And therefore, the prudence and the wisdom of Solomon manifest here in the story.
Thank you, Father.
Okay.
Father, what does the Bible say about the wisdom of Solomon?
Usually, Solomon is called Solomon the Wise, his wisdom. In fact, the first book of Kings, chapter 4, verses 29 onwards, that illustrates beautifully the vastness of his wisdom. Maybe we will read a passage from there. And God gave Solomon wisdom and understanding beyond measure, and largeness of mind like the sand on the seashore, so that Solomon's wisdom surpassed the wisdom of all the people of the East and all the wisdom of Egypt. For he was wiser than all other men, wiser than Ethan, the Ezrahite, and Heman, Kalkol, and Darda, the sons of Mahol. And his fame was in all the nations round about. He also uttered 3,000 proverbs, and his songs were 1,005. He spoke of trees, from the cedar that is in Lebanon to the hyssop that grows out of the wall. He spoke also of beasts and of birds and reptiles and fish. And men came from all peoples to hear the wisdom of Solomon, and from all the kings of the earth who had heard of his wisdom. What a wonderful man. Now, it is because of this that by and large, Solomon is considered to be the author of wisdom literature. At least at the beginning of 3 books of the wisdom literature, Book of Proverbs, and also Ecclesiastes, and also the Song of Songs. The names of Solomon, it is explicitly stated that these are composed by him, though the scripture scholars say it is only attributed to him. Anyway, Solomon had the reputation that he was well known for his wisdom, and that is that he could speak about animals, about reptiles, about fish. He knew all about trees, and it's also said he composed 3,000 proverbs, and his wisdom was greater than all the wisdom of the people of the East. And East means Assyria, Mesopotamia, and Babylon, plus Egypt. In the ancient days, these were known as the land of the wise people, and because of that, Solomon is known as Solomon the Wise.
Okay, Father, Solomon is a man of wisdom. So I believe this wisdom is given by God. So at the same time, he also has killed people. So how come God is, one part is a murderer, the other part is given so much of wisdom?
As we have said some time back, we are still in the Old Testament. The fullness of the divine wisdom that is revealed in Jesus of Nazareth. So there is the folly of the cross, and that is what we find in Jesus of Nazareth. And there is real success in failure. Apparently, Jesus of Nazareth was a failure. On Good Friday afternoon, he was the greatest failure in the world. But we know that his failure was only for the time being, and real success was there. And this is also called the foolishness of the cross. The foolishness of the cross is something uniquely of the New Testament. And this is something which the world cannot understand. And that is why St. Paul would say in the letter to the Corinthians, we are preaching about Jesus crucified. It is a scandal to the Jews and a stumbling block to the Gentiles. But only those who are on the path of salvation, they will understand. Therefore, the foolishness of the cross and the stupidity of the cross, ultimately that is real wisdom. And what Solomon had, that is the wisdom of the world, though God gave him, that was only one stage of the development of morality. That comes, the fullness of morality is revealed in the person, the life and teaching of Jesus of Nazareth.
Okay. Thank you, Father.
Father, I had a question. Although David was so precious to the Lord that, like you said before, he was given a certificate by Yahweh saying, a man after my own heart. But then, even after this, why was he not allowed to build the temple?
In the second book of Chronicles, there is an indication given that he was a man of war. Because David had to engage in a number of battles. Most probably, shedding blood, though for a just cause, that was not so pleasing to Yahweh. And Solomon, while writing to Hiram, the king of Tyre, he says, my father, he had a lot of struggle in his life. Now I am free from all such things. And now I want to build a palace and a house for the Lord. And therefore, basically, the reason why David was not able to build a house was he was preoccupied with battle, war, and that was also an occasion for shedding blood.
So however you look at it, shedding of blood, Yahweh is the God of all. So even when, like you mentioned before, that was for a just cause, but still the shedding of blood was something that was held against him.
That is very much visible in chapter 9 of the book of Genesis. After the deluge, God said, I will ask for an account for blood, human blood. And that is why anybody who sheds blood, that I will ask an account from him. And therefore shedding blood is supposed to be the heinous crime, already from the beginning of human history. That is why we find also in the book of Genesis, God has absolutely prohibited that shedding of blood. The sacredness of blood. The sacredness comes because according to the Hebrew mentality, life is in the blood. And God alone is the author and master of life. And nobody has the right to take life. And by shedding blood means you take away life. And that is not allowed.
Thank you, Father.
Father, what is the meaning of the figures of the cherubim in the temple?
While speaking about the decorations and the arrangement in the Temple of Jerusalem, a lot of space is given to describe that cherubim, or sometimes also called cherubim, how many cubit long it was, what was its width, how was it made, etc. We should understand that the cherubim is the figure of angels. In the ancient Mesopotamian world, these were the angels considered to be the guardians. And two such figures were mounted on the Ark of the Covenant, 10 cubit tall it is said, made of olive wood, sometimes also cedar wood, and covered with gold, and prostrating before Yahweh. And not only upon the Ark of the Covenant, but also in the inside of the temple walls, that also had the pictures of cherubim, pomegranate, palm trees, and open flowers. It was actually a kind of adding beauty to the house of the Lord, plus to show a sense of majesty, because the heavenly throne, because the Ark of the Covenant was considered to be the throne of Yahweh, and around the throne of Yahweh, the cherubim, as they are waiting upon the throne of Yahweh in heaven, actually it is represented here. And it has got also another significance. In the book of Deuteronomy and also in the book of Exodus, it is said, "You shall not make any image or statue." But the very same God is asking to make the statue, the figures of cherubim or these angels, palm trees, and also. What is the meaning of that? It has something also to do with the whole idea of statues and figures. Now, in the Temple of Jerusalem, to add beauty and majesty, and also to give a sense of reverence and awe to the whole divine reality, the figures of angels were kept. But they were not objects of adoration, far from that, and the statues and the figures are not to be adored, but as part of the decorations of the temple of God, also to give a sense of majesty, beauty, and sense of reverence, and perhaps that was the reason. And it was not an absolute prohibition. So now there are some people who say, God has said, you shall not make any figures, etc. But the second part also is important. You shall not make any figures and bow down or adore them. That is an important point. And in the Temple of Jerusalem, they had the cherubim, but they were not adoring that. But the cherubim that reminded them of the heavenly throne. And that is why around that Ark of the Covenant, these two cherubim were placed, and a lot of details are given, how they were placed, how long their wings were, how they were made, etc. So that is the importance of cherubim.
Okay, thank you, Father.
Father, what was the arrangement in the Temple of Jerusalem?
The Temple of Jerusalem was rectangular in shape. At the eastern end was the so-called Holy of Holies. That was separated from the holy place by a curtain. In the Holy of Holies, they were keeping the Ark of the Covenant. And as we said some time back, it was around this Ark of the Covenant, two figures of cherubim were kept. In the Ark of the Covenant, that was actually a wooden structure, but inlaid or covered with gold. And inside this Ark, they had put two stone tablets where God himself had written down the 10 commandments. And then around that, these two angels are staying. But it was a dark room. There was no window or door. In order to show the majesty, the unapproachability of God. God is living in darkness, so to say. Of course, we speak God is light, but not in that sense. No, you cannot comprehend or understand God perfectly well. And that is the reason why the Holy of Holies is the place where only once a year, the high priest alone enters there. The ordinary priest has no access. On the day of purification, it is called Yom Kippur. The high priest enters there and pours the blood in expiation for the sins of the people of Israel. So much of reverence they had. Then the Holy of Holies, then there's a curtain made with gold and tapestries, and then the holy place. In the holy place, there is the altar. There is the altar of incense, altar of sacrifice, and it was upon this altar of incense. For example, in the New Testament, Zechariah was offering incense. And there was also the table of showbread. 12 bread used to be placed there on this table in order to represent the 12 tribes of Israel. And there was the lampstand, menorah it is called in Hebrew, made of gold. And it is also said, light from the menorah was falling upon the bread, showing thereby Yahweh, because this bread is actually representing Israel, have a concern for our people, Israel. Therefore, Israel is always before Yahweh, represented by this bread. Okay, that was in the holy place. And in the holy place there was the altar, and usually the blood of the sacrificial victim, the animals, it used to be poured upon the foot of this altar only. As I said, only once a year the high priest enters the Holy of Holies, but ordinarily the normal priests, they burn the holocaust or burn the offering, etc. on this altar. Then we are also outside the temple, a place for washing and offering sacrifice or putting the ashes, etc. So this was, roughly speaking, the arrangement of the temple. But all around the structure, there were rooms to stock things, also rooms for the priests, etc. But the most important part of the temple was the Holy of Holies and the holy place.
Father, from your explanation just now, it's also quite similar to the Hindu temple. So is there any relationship?
You cannot compare, because the understanding of God is different from the understanding of God in the Old Testament is different from the understanding of Hindu way of looking at God, the divinity. According to the Hindu understanding, there is the presence of God in the Sanctum, that in the holy place.
Okay.
Whereas Old Testament, it is not a place for the presence of God, because Solomon would say later on, not even the world or the heavens can contain you. Therefore, God is transcendent. And therefore, according to the Hindu understanding, as far as we understand that there is divinity there. And but all the same, a sense of sacredness is given to the Sanctum, that holy place. From that point of view, there is a similarity. But the understanding of the intensity of that Sanctum, that is differing actually from the Hindu understanding of the temple and the Old Testament. And also the way of offering sacrifice and the understanding of sacrifice also is different. But externally, one can find some similarity. But then when we go to the theological understanding of the sacrifice, the theological understanding of divinity, on these points they are different.
Okay, thank you, Father.
Father, what is the significance of cloud in the temple?
It is said when Solomon dedicated or consecrated the temple, the cloud came and filled the temple. In the Old Testament and also in the New, cloud is a sign for the presence of God. And that means when a cloud has entered the temple of Jerusalem, God's presence is there. God is present in a very special way there. Though God cannot be contained in the temple, in a very special way His presence is there. This we find, the clouds we find when the people of Israel came out of Egypt on their way during the desert wandering. It is said a cloud was there during the daytime and a light was guiding them at the night time. So also before they entered into the covenant at Sinai, it is said a cloud came and descended upon the Mount of Sinai. When we come to the New Testament again, when Jesus was transfigured on Mount Tabor, it is said a cloud came and covered him. Likewise also at the time of ascension of the Lord, it is said the Lord blessed them on the Mount of Ascension and a cloud came and took him. So that cloud, that is Jesus has entered into the realm of God. So now from the realm of man, incarnation, now by means of ascension, that he has entered the realm of God. Therefore, cloud is a symbol of divine presence.
Father, I had a question. In 1 Kings chapter 3, verse 3 onwards, Solomon loved the Lord, walking in the statutes of his father David only. He sacrificed and offered incense at the high places. Now, although he was not from the tribe of Levi, still Solomon offers sacrifice. So does that, in a sense, make him a priest? How is he allowed to make sacrifice?
Yeah. In the strict sense of the term, only from the tribe of Levi, the house of Aaron, one could be a priest. From that point of view, Solomon was not a priest. But in ancient Israel, the kings also were offering sacrifice. And it was only from the time of Josiah, that is from the 7th century onwards, that this strict prohibition for any tribe other than the Levites to offer sacrifice that came into practice. And only in Jerusalem the sacrifice used to be offered. But according to the earliest tradition, the head of every family was considered to be a priest, because the Passover sacrifice, the Passover lamb, was killed the head of the family.
Yes, yes.
So that was the ancient most tradition. So in the ancient layer of tradition, the head of the family also had priestly function. It was only later that the priestly function came to be reserved only to the tribe of Levi, and more specifically in history, only from the 7th century onwards. Now Solomon is already in the 10th century.
Yes.
At the same time, the kings also had this function.
Okay. They could offer sacrifices if they wished. Thank you much, Father. Father, it also I wanted to thank you, because there was always this confusion that, about how to view statutes and figures that we have in church.
Yeah.
Like now, you just now mentioned that, they are not meant for adoration.
Yeah.
They were just there for the beauty, like the cherubim in the Temple of Jerusalem, not for any adoration. I think that is a distinction that now has become very clear in our minds.
Yeah.
So thank you very much, Father.
Okay. Not only that, in the Old Testament, this prohibition about making statues had also another dimension. In the Old Testament, God was not visible.
Yes.
When we come to the New Testament, God has appeared in human form.
Yes, revealed himself.
Therefore, the understanding of God differs. And cherubim here in the Temple of Jerusalem, a sense of awe and reverence, majesty, and but not to be adored. So, according to the Catholic understanding, the statues and the figures and pictures are not to be adored. Then it becomes idolatry.
Yes.
But that arouses in your heart a sense of reverence, and also reminds you of the people who are behind that.
Yes.
And Jesus, insofar as he has come in human form, it is also legitimate to represent Jesus and also saints in human form.
Yes.
So that's the difference. At the same time, we should also remember, in many places in popular piety, maybe the distinction between adoration and veneration is rather thin.
Yes.
But theoretically, we all would say it is not adoration.
Correct, because then I think the only thing that needs to be adored, or that should be adored, is the Blessed Sacrament.
Yeah, correct.
Nothing other than that should be adored.
Correct.
Thank you much, Father. Viewers, thank you very much for being with us on this episode. Father has again made it clear to us how the statues and the other figures that we have in church are meant to remind us of the different saints that we ask for intercession. They are not meant to be adored. Till we meet next time, stay blessed.